It's cheap, it's good on gas, it's got great aftermarket support, it's tunable, it's got 4 doors, and it holds its value well. It's the greatest car of all time. It's the Honda Civic. No matter who you are or what your opinion of Honda may be, you've got to admit that the Civic is a great car. I'd go as far as saying that it is one of the most successful cars of all time. Whether we're talking about present day, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and maybe even 50 years ago, the Civic was always there. Throughout my entire life, it's always been easy to find a Civic because they're just everywhere. The Civic has managed to remain popular over nearly half a century because of its legendary reliability, low price, amazing efficiency, and ability to maintain its value. Though its ability to maintain its value might be an effect of the previous 4 qualities, but that's besides the point. Throughout this process, it's managed to become an integral part of car culture. Sure, it spends most of the time being on the receiving end of many jokes, but nonetheless, it remains relevant. This is because despite the hate it gets, it's still a great entry-level car. It's easy to modify, and it's cheap, making it an ideal first car for enthusiasts who are just getting started. There are memes about the Civic that are older than some children today. The earliest appearance of the Civic in car culture that I can remember is from the first Fast and Furious movie. Now, if you don't share the same weird hyperfixation that I do with the movies, allow me to jog your memory a little bit. The Civic appears in the opening scenes where 3 of them with green underglow are robbing a semi-truck, and then we see them several more times throughout the movie. And we also see Hector order 3 T66 turbos with NOS and a Motec system exhaust. While the Civic has seen its fair share of jokes, it also does get respected in some instances. For example, the Civic with a laptop seems to be equally feared and respected by almost all car enthusiasts. But where did the tale of this automotive legend begin? Of course, there would be no Honda Civic without Honda. Honda was founded and created in 1946 by Soichiro Honda, I definitely butchered that, but let's move on, in a small town named Hamatsu, located, of course, in Japan. But before we dive into the tale of the Civic, please allow me to just give you some interesting facts about Honda. So Honda is the world's largest manufacturer of motorcycles and internal combustion engines, measured per unit. Now, I didn't know that. Honda didn't even produce their first car until the year 1963, which is 17 years after the company's creation. And soon after this, we arrived at the 1973 oil crisis, where oil prices rose by almost 300%, which subsequently caused the price of fuel to then rise as well. During this time, people became obsessed with finding the most fuel-efficient cars possible to save money on gas. And coincidentally, the Civic also made its first appearance in 1973, featuring a compound vortex-controlled combustion, or CVCC, engine. This engine allowed for far more efficient combustion than others and was able to run either unleaded or leaded fuel. This gave drivers far more flexibility than other automobiles were offering at the time, while also being fuel efficient during the oil crisis. Now, as you can likely imagine, the first generation Civic was an immediate hit. It was debuted in Japan in 1972 and began selling in 1973. In addition to its CVCC engine, it also had quite a few other tricks up its sleeve. It was the first Japanese car to have something similar to the European styling going on at the time, which made it look way more expensive than it really was. This styling was quickly copied by other Japanese brands. The Mazda Familia AP, the Daihatsu Charade, and the Mitsubishi Mirage are just a few notable examples. The Civic also featured a transverse-mounted front-wheel drive platform. Now, this platform was quickly copied by several other auto manufacturers, namely the 1974 Volkswagen Golf, 1976 Ford Fiesta, and 1978 Fiat Ritmo. All copied the Civic styling. Well, they didn't copy the styling. They did copy the drivetrain, excuse me. The first generation Civic also came in a lot of different configurations, which I love. You could get it as a 2 or 4 door sedan, a 3 or 5 door hatchback, or a 3 or 5 door wagon, which would have been awesome. But I think the big takeaway from this section is that the first generation Civic only took 1 year to make a clear impact on the automotive industry. Now, I'm not going to name any names here, but some manufacturers still haven't made a lasting impact on the automotive industry. Now, the second generation of the Civic debuted in 1979 and began selling in 1980. This generation featured a new design, more power, and 3 transmission options. So we had a 4-speed manual, a 5-speed manual, and a 2-speed semi-automatic called the Honda-matic. The Honda-matic transmission had only 2 gears and did not shift automatically, but you wouldn't need to use a clutch. You could just shift the gear level from first to second because of its torque converter. And also because of its torque converter, you could actually just drive entirely in second gear. Now, I've written an article about torque converters and made a video about it. I'm going to link the video somewhere along the top of the screen. I know I'm not pointing at the right spot, but I'll do it later. Please check it out, it would mean a lot. The third generation Civic debuted in 1983 and began selling in 1984. Now, this was a pretty important generation for the Civic because it introduced a lot of cool things. This was the first generation of the Civic to use the D-Series engine, and we also saw the debut of the SI and the CRZ SI in 1984. We saw a four-wheel drive system introduced to the Civic, which I think is wild. It began as just optional four-wheel drive that you would just activate by pushing a button, and then it switched to what they call the real-time system that would automatically engage when the front wheels lost traction. A new gear was added to the transmission called the Super Low or SL, which now makes it a 6-speed. This gear was built to provide more torque at low speeds, which, if we're being honest, all Hondas kind of need that. And finally, the Blade was created in South Africa as a part of the third generation. The fourth generation was released in 1987. While it didn't bring in as many changes as the third did, it still is pretty impressive. Here we saw the introduction of the B16 and B16A in the SIR for the Japanese market, as well as electronic fuel injection. Now, during this generation, Honda started using their new plant in Allison, Ontario, which represent. The fifth generation debuted in 1991 and began selling in 1992. Unfortunately, this is the generation where the Civic wagon just became exclusive to the Japanese market, a fact that still bothers car enthusiasts to this day. However, it's not all doom and gloom with this generation. We saw the introduction of the godly technology we know as VTEC. This is also the generation that the AMG Blade was born from. Now, I'm going to put a link up top. I just made a video about the AMG Blade. Please check that one out. And this is also the generation where we saw the first introduction of the Civic Coupe. The sixth generation of the Civic debuted in 1995 and began selling in 1996. Here we saw the introduction of the SI Coupe, and I believe that this is the generation of Civic that's been used in Fast and Furious 1. Finally, this generation also introduced the first Civic Type R, but it was exclusive to Japan. The seventh generation debuted in 2000 and began selling in 2001. Now, the Civic grew during this generation, like physically grew. Its interior space was increased, and the Civic jumped from being a subcompact car to a compact car. We saw the introduction of the legendary K-Series motor in this generation as well. Here, the Civic started to look more like the modern Civics that we know today. The 8th generation Civic debuted in 2005 and began selling in 2006, and it looked really modern for the time. This was a big generation for the SI because here's where it really started to gain some respect and became loved by a lot of enthusiasts. If you ask enthusiasts today, a lot of them are going to tell you that the 8th gen SI is one of the best gens there was. We also witnessed the creation of the legendary Mugen SI here too. The 9th generation debuted in 2011 and began selling in 2012. Interestingly, this generation was never sold in Japan except for 750 limited Type R units in 2015, and this might have been for a reason. The generation that we're talking about was developed during the 2008 financial crisis. Now, Honda decided to focus on the fuel efficiency and affordability rather than design and quality, and Honda paid dearly for this. They were forced to perform a facelift on the models in 2013. Now, the 10th generation debuted in 2015 and began selling in 2016. This generation featured a dramatically new exterior styling to help them recover from their stumble in the previous generation, and I personally like this styling, but nearly everyone had a love and hate relationship with it. This generation saw the release of the Civic Type R in North America, which is amazing, and that was unfortunately also the last generation of Civic to offer the Civic Coupe. We also saw the introduction of the L15 motor, which has a 1.5, or which is a 1.5 liter turbo, also has a love and hate thing for most people, but perhaps a silver lining of this is that we saw the return of the Civic hatchback to North America. So far, we've spoken about the origins of the Civic and the generations it's been through since then, but where is the Civic today? That brings us to the 11th generation. This generation debuted in 2020/2021 and began selling in 2022. Now, this generation looks much more modern, refined, and matured than the previous 10th generation. It also looks a lot like an Audi A3. It's a very bad case of automotive mimicry, which I've also made a previous video about. Please check that one out, that's one of my favorites. And on the Canadian spec, we kind of saw a decent luxury bump. I say Canadian spec because the American spec didn't get every one of these features, but on the Canadian spec, we had heated seats, heated steering wheel, full digital dash, a 12-speaker Bose sound system, limited slip diff, and Honda's full suite of safety tech standard on the Canadian SI. And I think that's a pretty impressive package for such a cheap or relatively cheap car, and I think it'd make a perfect daily. The Civic Type R of this generation also is nothing to scoff at either. It currently holds the fastest lap time of any front-wheel drive car on the Nürburgring ever. This is no small feat, and I think it serves as a testament to Honda's resilience and commitment. Over the years, Honda stayed committed to the front-wheel drive platform. They could have jumped to all-wheel drive like nearly every other company did, but they chose to stay true to their roots. And the fruits of their labor are clearly visible. No other manufacturer's front-wheel drive vehicles can even touch the Civic Type R on the track. Today, Honda remains a major player in both the automotive industry and car culture. You can't drive more than 10 minutes without seeing a Honda on the road, and you also can't scroll social media for more than 10 minutes without seeing something related to Honda, assuming you're a car enthusiast and your feed is tailored to that. I think it's just pretty crazy that over the course of nearly half a century, the Civic hasn't just remained relevant, it's remained a major player in car culture and the industry. Thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end of this video. If you liked what you saw, I'm going to have some more videos right here on the screen for you. Also, if you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate that. And check out my blog, www.sharksauto.com. Everything on there is free. You can see all of my articles, and every one of my YouTube videos is based on an article, and the articles go up first. So if you want early access, check out the blog, and I will see you guys next time.